This meeting is being recorded.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Katie King. I'm with the California Air Resources Board. We're here today to talk about the school bus fleet reporting. Our presenter today is going to be April, but before we get started, I just want to let everyone know that this meeting is being recorded. We will have the handout, which is a printout of the slides available for you in the chat function. If you do have any issues accessing that, please email me after the webinar and I will be able to provide that to you. I'll provide my email in the chat as well so everyone can see that. We also are going to be taking questions at the end. Please use the Q&A function in Zoom to submit your questions. We will try to address things in the Q&A throughout as well, but any questions that need to be addressed verbally will be addressed at the end. So with that, I'll pass it over to April and we will get started.
Good morning, everybody. In this webinar, we will be providing instructions for navigating and completing school bus reporting and the Truck Regulation Upload Compliance and Reporting System, also known as TRUCRS. The TRUCRS reporting system is for all private and federally owned on-road trucks and buses subject to the requirements of the Truck and Bus Regulation. This training is for fleets that have school buses and need to report their school bus information to demonstrate they are in compliance when applying for grant funding programs or to satisfy a request from CARB. If you need help with compliance requirements and what steps you need to take to clean up your school bus fleet or other white fleet vehicles, Randy Otfer and Katie teach a compliance overview class for public fleet or school bus fleet managers called MS 523. This training is typically scheduled throughout the state and is currently available as a live webinar as well as a recorded webinar. If you are completely new to reporting, we suggest you follow along, but also you can request the recording of a video so you can refer back to it if needed. Once we're done today, this video will be available upon request. Please email Randy or Katie for a link today. This video will also be posted on the CARB school bus webpage. If you have questions, you can ask them throughout the training by dropping them in the Q&A section of Zoom navigation panel, and we will answer them after the webinar verbally. If you have any questions after the training has concluded, you can call the diesel hotline and identify yourself as a school bus. Next slide, please. Today, we'll be starting with an overview of school bus reporting. Then we will show you how to log into TRUCRS. Once logged into TRUCRS, we will cover how to report company information, vehicle and engine information, and finally, we will show you how to complete reporting. Next slide. We'll kick off with school bus reporting. Let's start with the school bus reporting requirements. Generally, school buses are subject to the school bus requirements of the Truck and Bus Regulation, but they are not required to report. Because reporting is not required, the system will not generate a certificate of compliance for school bus fleets. Internal record keeping for school buses is still required, even if reporting is not. Even though the Truck and Bus Regulation does not require reporting for school buses, most state grant funding programs require fleets to report in order to be eligible for funding. As part of the grant application process, the local air district or state agency running the program may ask the school bus owners to report school bus fleet information, including all diesel school buses with a gross vehicle weight rating greater than 14,000 pounds in TRUCRS in order to verify compliance with the regulation. Additionally, you may have received a request from CARB to report older school buses in your fleet. Information that must be reported includes owner information, bus and engine information, and compliance status. The information asked for in TRUCRS reporting system would be the same information that is already required to be included with internal record keeping. Next slide, please. Now we'll show you how to log into TRUCRS. The first step in reporting is logging in. Sometimes this step can present its own challenges. People lose passwords, and staff that have previously done the reporting may have left districts. I will show you how to log in and retrieve your password. One thing that needs to be made clear is if you do not want to create an account if you already have one. Duplicate accounts will be flagged for staff review, and you will have to call the diesel hotline before you can save changes to your fleet. Anytime you are having issues reporting, you can call the diesel hotline. Be sure to identify yourself as a school bus fleet. We will show you how to access the TRUCRS login screen and retrieve your password with the username and email address on file, or if you're missing that information, what form must be submitted to update the login information. Next slide. If you go to your internet, how to access TRUCRS. If you go to your internet search engine and type in TRUCRS, not only will you find the login screen itself, but you can also see our annual reporting guide and other helpful reporting tools. Next slide, please. This is the TRUCRS reporting webpage. Here are the online reporting guides and paper reporting forms. You can scroll down to the bottom of this page and click the report button to begin reporting. Next slide. If you have not created an account already, you can click the Create New Account in the New Users column. If you already have an account, please enter your login information in the center column to access the account. We will start with how to log in for new users, then move on to troubleshooting if you've forgotten your login information for your existing account. Next slide, please. This is the first step to creating an account. You will need to provide a contact person name and phone number for the account in addition to an email address, which is where the password will be sent. When choosing a username, we recommend using something that is unique to your company instead of a staff name. Next slide, please. After submitting the information for a new account, you will receive an email that shows the username you have chosen and a system-generated password. You will be able to change the password after you log into the account. This email will come from an email address, doors@arb.ca.gov. This is a sister reporting system to TRUCRS that is used for off-road equipment, but does apply to the TRUCRS reporting system. Because the DOORS system manages logins for both DOORS and TRUCRS, if you already have a DOORS login, you can use that to log into TRUCRS as well. Next slide, please. Existing users will log in using the center column. If you just created an account, you will enter in the credentials that were emailed to you. If you've forgotten your password, use the links at the bottom of the center column labeled Existing Users. There are two options here: change login information / close account, or forgot username password. Let's say we forgot our password. Next slide. To retrieve your password, you must enter the username and email address that was used when the account was created. You will receive an email again from doors@arb.ca.gov with your password. If you do not have a username or access to the email address used when the account was created, you will need to click the Click Here hyperlink on this page or the Change Login Information hyperlink on the previous page. Next slide, please. Clicking either of those links will take you to this form, which you must fill out and completely and return to truckers@arb.ca.gov. It may take up to 3 business days for this form to be processed and for your account to be updated. You will receive a confirmation email from TRUCRS once this paperwork has been processed. Next slide, please. Now we're back at the login page. I'm going to log in with my credentials. Please remember your password is case sensitive. Next slide. When you log into the system for the first time, you will see a note that says there is no fleet in this account currently. Click the Add New Fleet button to begin inputting your fleet information. Next slide, please. If you've already added a fleet to your account, the account will list your TRUCRS ID, fleet name, and the number of vehicles you have reported. Here you will have the option to view or update your fleet or to delete your fleet. There's also a tab where you can check compliance status, but this is not applicable to school bus fleets because the system does not calculate their compliance. You can log out on the top right corner of this page as well. Here's the account settings page. This is where you can update the primary contact information and change your password to something unique. If there will be multiple people working in this account, make sure the password is something you feel comfortable sharing with whomever else will need access to the account. Each account only has one login. Now we'll move on to reporting company information. Before you can start reporting your buses, you must report company information. This will require that you have a unique tax ID. If multiple fleets report using the same tax ID, the accounts will be flagged and you will need to contact the diesel hotline for assistance. This is the company information tab. This section is asking for general information about the fleet. In addition to the fields shown on the screen, it will also ask you for a designated contact person. This will include an email address, which will be used to send any important information regarding your account. Additionally, the contact information may be used by the call center to verify account security if you call the hotline for questions. You will be required to complete this page in order to save the information. If you have entered information such as a tax ID or VIN into the database that has already been entered under a different account, your account could be flagged. If your account is flagged, you will need to contact the diesel hotline to assist you in assessing your account. This is an example of when I was creating my test account, I entered the tax ID 123456778. The system flagged my account and I wasn't able to add vehicles until this was cleared with TRUCRS staff. Now, if we navigate back to the home page, we can see the account was just created and click on the view or update link. Before navigating to the company or vehicle information, TRUCRS will take you to the message center. This is where CARB posts updated regulatory information. Please note that because you are reporting a school bus fleet, this information may or may not be relevant to your fleet. From this page, you can click on the company information tab. Be sure the contact information on the company page remains up to date. This includes your email address, mailing address, and phone number. If CARB needs to contact you, this is the information that we will use. Next slide, please. This is the contact information portion of the company tab. Next slide, please. Now we will discuss how to report vehicles and their engine information. To report your vehicle information correctly, you are going to have to enter some key information about the vehicle and engine, including the VIN, the vehicle type, the engine family number, and the compliance option. The vehicle type in this case should be bus school for each vehicle. At this point in the regulation, the only way to be compliant is to select a compliance option. For school buses, the options are original equipment PM filter, a retrofit PM filter, or low use designation. Low use vehicles must be driven less than 1,000 miles per year. To add vehicles, click the tab for Vehicle Info, then click the Add New Vehicle link. The first piece of information you'll need to report is the VIN. The VIN is a required field and the system will not save the information without it. The TRUCRS database will verify the VIN has the correct number of digits and is not a duplicate. If the information reporting has an issue, you will receive an error message telling you to correct the information. If the information is correct and you still receive an error, you will need to email truckers@ARB explaining the error message you are receiving. You will not be able to edit the VIN once it is saved. You will also need to email TRUCRS for assistance. If you have your own vehicle ID, you can enter that as well. Your owner ID will allow you to more easily identify vehicles in your fleet if you have your own system. You will also enter the vehicle model year, vehicle make and model. Under vehicle type, it is very important you enter bus school as your body type and that you are only reporting your school buses. We do not need information about non-school buses in your fleet. Fuel type will be diesel, since the only buses you need to report are diesel fueled. Registration type, license plate, and registration are also required. In the next drop-down menu, you will need to select the vehicle class that corresponds with the bus's gross vehicle weight rating. This will likely be classes 4 through 8. This option used to be reflected as gross vehicle weight rating and may need to be edited. If you have a bus that is exactly 14,000 pounds or less than 14,000 pounds, it does not need to be reported. The final piece of information to report is the date purchased. If you are unsure of the exact purchase date and the bus was purchased before January 1st of 2012, you may input that as the vehicle's purchase date. Next slide, please. Next, we will report the engine information. In this section, the first piece of information to enter is the engine family. This can be a tricky piece of information to find, so here's a closer look. The engine family number may also be called the engine family name or emission family name or emission family number. This can be found on the emission control label. It is 10 to 12 characters long. It is required by law to have a legible, intact emission control label on your engine while operating in California. If you do not have a label, you cannot read it, or you cannot locate the engine family number on the label, you can contact the engine manufacturer and they can provide you with a new emission control label in addition to your engine family name. The link on this slide may help you find your engine family number. It can be hard to find on the engine label, especially on older vehicles and school buses, but is necessary information to report in TRUCRS. Next is the engine manufacturer, engine model, and engine year. The engine model year may be 1 year behind the bus model year since the engine is manufactured separate from the bus chassis. The field that says compliance option is where you will select the compliance option for the vehicle. Let's take a closer look at the options available. At this point in the regulation, there are only a few compliance options still available. PM filter original equipment. This option is for school buses that came with PM filters originally from the manufacturer. PM filter retrofit. This option is for school buses that have a verified aftermarket PM filter retrofit installed. 2022 low use. This is the final option and it is for school buses that operate less than 1,000 miles annually. You must enter an odometer reading from January of the compliance year for which you are reporting. Records for low use school buses should be maintained internally. If you select none from the drop-down menu, the bus will be considered out of compliance. At this point in the regulation, all buses must have a PM filter or be designated as low use to be considered compliant. If the bus isn't following the low use option and doesn't have a filter, the bus and entire fleet would be considered non-compliant. For retrofits, TRUCRS will ask for some additional information about the filter that was installed. The installer may be able to assist with getting the PM filter information, but the requirement is to have a PM filter information label on both the engine itself and the retrofit. We've reached the last section of this presentation today, completing reporting. Once you have entered all of your buses, you are done with reporting. Since school buses are not required to be reported, the system will not calculate compliance and there will not be a compliance certificate available. If you are reporting to be eligible for funding, depending on the funding program you are applying to, you may need to print your vehicle list or provide a TRUCRS ID number on or with your application. If you are reporting to satisfy a CARB request, we will have access to your information and there is no further action needed unless specifically requested. This is the fleet vehicle list that can be submitted to demonstrate compliance. Quickly looking at the compliance option, CARB staff can tell if the fleet has any buses out of compliance or any have the compliance option selected as none. If you click the compliance tab, you will see that the fleet is not eligible for a certificate, even though we know the fleet is compliant. TRUCRS does not calculate compliance for school buses and therefore does not generate a certificate of reported compliance. This page, however, does show the number of buses that are reported. This concludes our webinar for today. If you have any questions, please open the Zoom control panel and submit them under the question and answer section. If you think of additional questions after the webinar or run into issues while reporting, you may call the Diesel hotline at 866-634-3735. Be sure to identify yourself as a school bus fleet so they are able to provide you with the correct guidance. You can also email TRUCRS for assistance with reporting. It will take 3 to 5 business days to receive a response.
All right, thank you, April. So we'll go ahead and open it up for questions. Randy, were there any questions in the Q&A that need to be addressed?
There's one, and it says, actually, it has nothing to do with what April can help us with. Wanted to know if there's a copy of the presentation, and Katie posted one in the chat window at the beginning of the presentation. Katie, do you have to do that again in case this person?
I do. So with Zoom, if you're not in the meeting when it's posted, it doesn't show up in the chat history. So we always like to post it at the beginning and end. So I did just post it again. Hopefully everyone should be able to see that. But I'll put my email in the chat as well, just in case anyone's unable to access it. And feel free to just email me for a copy of the presentation. And then we also have Heather Choi on the line today. I don't know, Heather, if you wanted to talk about HVIP at all while we're here.
Hi, yeah, Katie. HVIP. I don't
Sorry
really
to put you on the spot.
It's open still and accepting applications for school buses. So that's I'll put the link in the chat for the HVIP program.
Perfect. Sounds great.
Yeah,
So
I am here in case anybody has questions about how to apply for that.
Yes. So HVIP school bus set aside is open, and Heather's here to answer any questions if anyone has it on that. And then we'll have Randy keeping track of the time, and we'll stick around for 5 more minutes or so just to have any questions filter in.
Yeah, we might as well go to 10:30. Does that sound all right for everybody?
Sure. Sounds great.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, so somebody still can't see the presentation in the chat window. Hey, Jennifer, this is Randy. If you want to send an email or give us your email address, we'll just email that directly to you. Okay, so we have Travis and Griffin who's asking, is the HVIP a bus replacement grant? So Heather, that's for you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so there's a couple of ways to get funding for school buses through HVIP this year. And HVIP is a voucher-based program for, well, it stands for hybrid and zero emission trucks and buses, but there's not really a lot of hybrids anymore. So mainly it's going to fund zero emission school buses, which tend to be the battery electric type right now. You can apply now for a rebate. It's not a rebate, but it's a voucher, but it's for some of the cost to be covered of a new zero emission school bus. And then there's also a new one this year for a particular priority group of school bus fleet, which is the old school buses in underserved areas. And that program is called the school bus or the public school bus set aside through HVIP. So if you go to HVIP and you type in some kind of like school bus set aside, you should be able to find the information. But that will fund most or all of the cost of a new zero emission school bus for the school bus fleets that own buses in the underserved areas. But that one, because we are funding most or all of the costs, there is a replacement requirement. So we are looking for older than 2007 school buses to be scrapped or dismantled. That's it.
Okay, so we have a question again, Heather. This will probably be for you. It's from Gilbert, who says, In the past, we have been told by a local bus vendor to input all school buses over 14,000 pounds, regardless of fuel type, for the grant purposes. Would we need to remove them? Would this be acceptable?
So is this directed to me?
Yeah, so what he's saying is that in order to get grants, local districts are going to tell you to put your entire fleet into the TRUCRS reporting system so they can
Yes,
demonstrate that you're in compliance.
I see. Yeah. So for the HVIP program, for the public school bus set aside, we are only looking at a vehicle by vehicle compliance status. So we're not checking your whole fleet for compliance in TRUCRS, but I would not remove anything from TRUCRS unless you're instructed to by the administering agency. It doesn't sound like it would be a good practice, but when we're, just to let you know, when we're looking at fleet compliance for HVIP, for the school buses, at least, we're only looking for the actual school bus to be compliant. And that means, did you guys already talk about what that means? Sorry if I don't remember how old or what you said at the beginning, but that would basically mean it either has a filter on it, either installed after it was made or put in by the manufacturer. If it was usually like around 2006, or I can't remember what year, but they started to make all school buses with diesel particulate filtration systems on them. So yeah, so I guess just in general, don't remove anything from TRUCRS, and we do just look at a vehicle by vehicle, bus by bus basis.
Yeah, so I can help you out a little bit there on the
Thank you.
actual when the filters came out. It was in the 2007 engine model year. So when we're asking for anything 2006 and older engine, those would all be retrofitted buses for the most part.
Adding on to that question, TRUCRS actually is not equipped to accept non-diesel vehicles. So if you try to report non-diesel, you will only have the option to indicate the fuel type as diesel. If you have reported gasoline vehicles indicating them as diesel, I would recommend removing them using the entered an error option.
Okay, fantastic. April, we have another question for you, and that is that's from Steve. How do you find out if you already have a TRUCRS account?
Find out.
Yeah, if they don't know, I mean, who do you send an email to truckers@arb.ca.gov, correct?
Correct. And just provide the district name and ask if you already have a reporting account. If you do, we will respond and tell you that you do have one, and we'll give you your TRUCRS ID. We'll also send the login information for that account. It may or may not go to you. It's going to go to the email address used when the account was created.
Okay, thank you. We have another question I think I can answer, and April, you chime in if I get it wrong here. It's from Anthony Willis. It says the fleet maintenance manager is retiring tomorrow, and I'm guessing this person's taking over for them. Do I need to create my own login, or would have him change the information to me? And so you only get one login per TRUCRS account, so it's going to be the same. The username does not change. You can go in and change the password, and you can change, I believe, the email associated with the account. So those are things you need to get that information to log in and make those changes yourself, or sit with the fleet manager, whoever. Get that done so you have the information for you going forward, but it's not a different login.
That is all correct. And if he gets busy and doesn't do it, you can fill out the form and you'll be able to get access that way as well.
Okay, and we did have a question from Stephen Gow. Do public school districts, TRUCRS, so you phrased it a little bit interesting. So public schools are exempt from TRUCRS reporting, generally speaking. The reason that we're telling you to report is because if you want to get public funding, like grants or HVIP or something like that, the local district has to have some way to demonstrate that you're in compliance. And the only way they can do that easily is by you putting your information in the TRUCRS system, so that we have an actual verification that the fleet's in compliance, and then they can go forward with the funding. But just to back that up, technically school buses are not required to report to the trucker system.
Yeah, I think also maybe Randy, just to add to that, a little more background is that with the truck and bus regulation, that they to be kinder to school districts, public school districts. I don't know if it was kinder, but because it was definitely a long time ago. But they public school districts were not required to do as much as the other fleets were, if that makes any sense. So that's why there is a disconnect between all other vehicles under truck and bus, and then there's this exemption for the school buses. So hopefully that adds a little more nuance as to why this is a little different for school districts to have to use truckers, and the exact reason why we're presenting this information today, because it is weird.
That's good. The school buses actually under the truck and bus rule were only required to put filters on. They weren't actually required to move to 2010 engine vehicles. So that is a disconnect with every other vehicle that's under the truck and bus regulation.
Yeah, so that's yeah, exactly. So it's hard for people, I think, to realize that schools are just a little different because we wanted to be a little nicer too.
Randy, I think it's important to note for this stakeholder that their non-school buses should not be reported, and those are not subject to truck and bus. They're subject to PAU, which doesn't have a reporting requirement.
Yeah, that's a whole different animal right there, but you're absolutely correct. So just repeat what April said, and then we're down to the actually past 10:30. You have an entire school fleet of vehicles. The only ones we're talking to you about today that you want to report if you're interested in getting funding are the buses. The rest of the vehicles that the fleet operates, they're not part of the truck and bus regulation, and they're not part of the truckers reporting system, as April just said. All right,
and PAU is what?
The Public Agency and Utility Regulation. It was put in place back in 2005 and basically covers all the other vehicles. So that's all the publicly owned vehicles. All right, so Juan Sanchez says, so in truckers, only enter the buses that are diesel only, not the CNG, gas, or propane ones. He just wants to make sure that's correct.
That is correct.
Okay, fantastic. All right, well, we're out of questions here. Ladies, what would you like to do? Do you think we're good enough?
I think we're all set. So again, this is Katie again, but my email is in the chat. So if anyone does want the handout or the recording of the presentation, feel free to shoot me an email. It's katie.king@arb.ca.gov. But with that, we'll be posting the recording on the school bus webpage, and we will shut it down for the day. So thank you for, we had one more question pop in right at the end there, just under the wire.
Actually, I have two.
Right. Okay, so we'll go ahead and continue the questions until there are no open questions.
All right, so from April Rosenquist, she wants to know, what if a school district wants to get funding for a white fleet vehicle? You can apply for any of the same funding, I believe. It's just that there are set-asides like Heather was talking about specifically for school buses, but that does not preclude you from requesting funding for one of the other white fleet vehicles. I think that's correct. Is that correct, ladies?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And Jose Cruz is saying we have 4 2002 and 2003 model buses with particulate traps that came from the factory or the manufacturer. But TRUCRS does not allow us to input that information. So when you input one of these, and April, correct me again if I'm wrong here, but when you input one of these vehicles that came with a filter that's that old, there were some vehicles that were prior to, actually these are 2002, 2003. So if the choice in the drop-down menu under the engine information would be filtered from factory or something like that. What's the exact language, April?
So he is correct. The system is not going to let him tell us that there is an OEM filter on the engine. He will have to report the bus with the compliance path of none, and then send an email to the TRUCRS email address that's on this slide with your TRUCRS ID, the VIN number, and a picture of the engine control label or emission control label. That will show the family name. I will look up the executive order for the family name that's shown on the label and confirm that there is an OEM filter. TRUCRS will allow staff at CARB to make that indication for them. So once staff reviews the label, they'll update your account to show that there is an OEM filter, and then it will be fine.
Okay. All right, and then April, this might be another question for you. April Rosenquist is asking, do you need to report the white fleet in a separate account to satisfy any funding agency?
I can take that one if you want, April.
I don't know the funding. I'm not familiar with funding for white fleets.
Yeah, let me take this one.
Okay.
So it really depends on what the funding agency is asking the information for. So there are some instances where you might have a white fleet at a school that does need to be reported in TRUCRS in order to verify compliance for some funding programs. For instance, CARB did have, and I actually manage this program as well, the Clean Mobility in Schools pilot projects, where the funding was for a variety of types of projects, not just school bus replacements. But for that funding, we did want the school fleet to be compliant with all of our regulations for their entire fleet. So if they did have any vehicles, white fleet vehicles that were subject to the truck and bus regulation or PAU, like we had just mentioned. Also, we wanted to verify any compliance with our PSIP, which is the periodic smoke inspection. And so there are times, April, when you would need to do that, but it really depends on the funding that you're applying for. And so when you apply for grants or vouchers or whatever it is, there will be information in the solicitation or the announcement stating some of the requirements. And if it does say, compliance with, all these various regulations from the state, then that's not necessarily something the trucker staff can help with, but it's really on the funding agency that you need to work with.
All right, fantastic. So again, we're out of questions. I think we've gotten quite a number of good ones here today. I think we're done. Katie, do you want to go ahead and wind it up?
Yep. So just again, my email's in the chat, katie.king@arb.ca.gov if you do think of any questions afterward or want the handout or recording. And with that, I will shut it down for the day. So thank you everyone for attending.
Have a good day, everybody.